On today's show, the Hawks have an epic failure in Washington, D.C., losing to the Wizards by nearly 20 points. And honestly, it was worse than that. If you actually watch this one, we'll get into what fell apart, what it means, and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2111 of the Locked On Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday here in late November. And today's podcast is sponsored by the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And today, we'll be talking about what became a pretty epic disaster of a night for the Atlanta Hawks. 132 to 113 at the hands of the Washington Wizards. Yes, it was on the road, but boy, that is an ugly, ugly number to read out loud. It began with the Hawks' worst first quarter of the season, and really their worst quarter of the season overall, probably, followed by, and I guess including their worst half of the season of any kind in the first half, and then it became their worst game of the season, full stop. The Hawks were actually worse than the score indicates. If you have to miss this game, I know it's Thanksgiving week, people are traveling. It's probably sickos only right now, in particular after a loss like this. But the large final margin of 19 points was actually much worse than this. It's actually not the Hawks' most lopsided loss of the season by only the points, but that's because they were down by 28 points with 3 minutes to go and then had this very, very fake run at the very end of the game to lose by less than 20. But they were down by as many as 33, and again, by 28 with 3 minutes to go in this game. And to bring it full circle, the Hawks were favored by 10.5 points, according to our friends at FanDuel before this game started. That was the most the Hawks have been favored by in a game this season, which honestly made sense. Now, it was kind of a weird schedule spot for the Hawks. Third game in 4 nights. They've traveled 10 consecutive games, which I've been saying the last couple of games. But so a little bit of context there. It does not excuse anything by any means, but certainly a little bit of context. But the Wizards came in with the worst profile of any team in the league. They were 1-15. They had lost 14 consecutive games. And even if you throw in some context, and the Wizards shot the heck out of the ball in this game for sure, even with all that said, you cannot lose like this to the Wizards under any circumstance. The Wizards are bad. They have some talent, like they have more talent than the Nets, I think, for example, but still, like the margins maybe are a little bit more explicable when you factor in some of the other stuff, but this is a terrible performance, full stop. And if you listen to the podcast regularly, you will know I am big on context. I am big on nuance. I like to give you the entire picture. I'll do that on the show, but there's no other way to frame this. This is a terrible loss. I even said today, in fact, this morning, I was asked on social media, basically like, hey, is this a must-win game? And my answer is always going to be no about that in November. But I did say this is going to be a terrible loss if you lose the game kind of game. And this is a terrible loss. If they lost to the Wizards by 5, it'd be a pretty bad loss. To get destroyed like this is like remarkably bad. And on the bright side, it's a long season. This is not the NFL or college football when you have one game that can actually swing your season. It's an 82-game season. Like some of this can be flushed down the toilet. I will say that with full confidence. And some of the more crazy reactions I have found myself kind of laughing at after this game about how the season – look, the Hawks are still in totally fine shape. That's the takeaway from this. But the night itself was a disaster. There's no other way to frame that at all for the Hawks. Also, they're now eliminated from the NBA Cup. I guess technically they're not eliminated right now as we're speaking, but they're going to be eliminated. And whether you care about that or not, I know that not everybody cares. It matters a little bit, and that'll be discussed more later on in the podcast. Also, it was the Wizards' first NBA Cup victory ever. This is the third year of the event. They had not won an NBA Cup game in the first 2.5 cycles. That's crazy, but they've been bad for the entire time. So I mentioned before, but they had their worst quarter of the season. They were down by 29 points in the first quarter of this game. Now, I got to be honest. Atlanta got within 13 after a mild comeback, couple of runs in the middle. They had one good run in the entire game, honestly. And I will raise my hand. I thought at that moment the Hawks were probably going to win the game. Now, you're still underdogs at that point, to be fair. But I even said this in real time on social media. Like being down 29 to the Wizards and down 22 at the end of the first quarter to the Wizards, you don't want to be there. But if there's ever a time where a comeback is like more likely, not likely, but more likely, it's against the worst team in the league who plays a fast pace, has a bad defense, all that stuff. And the Hawks did, for about a half of a quarter, look like they were actually going to come back and maybe win this game. But that was the end of that. It didn't last long at all. They got worked in the third quarter, and that was kind of the end. So, boy, a lot to get to here for sure. If you're new to the podcast, this is a different episode for sure. But please stick around. Please subscribe to the show. We definitely appreciate you being here. And I endeavor to give you the entire picture on this podcast about every game and everything about the Hawks every week of the year. So I said before, kind of in jest, but also just 100% true, the Wizards have been the worst team in the league this year. That's important context. They came in at 1-15 overall. They were on a 14-game losing streak. They had a negative 15.5 net rating. That was the worst in the league by a lot. And they had the worst defensive rating of the entire season so far, 123.4. And then in the disastrous first half that decided the game. Like, the Hawks weren't good after halftime, but the game was decided by the first half performance. In that first half, the Hawks played like crap, and that should not be ignored. They were terrible. They lost composure at times. They had breakdowns, all of that. They also did get blitzed with some unsustainable shooting by the Wizards that certainly played a part in the margin. But overall, let's just say this. Defensively, the Hawks were comically bad. On offense, we'll come back to this in a second. They didn't play well, but they weren't a total disaster, I didn't think. Defensively, they really were. The Wizards did make 19 of their 38 threes in the game. They were 17 of 30 from three in the first three quarters. There is some bad luck / variance in there for sure. TJ McCollum, who is not exactly in his prime right now, had 46 points. And a lot of that was that he hit 10 threes. He was very normal from inside the arc. He hit 10 of 13 from three. So yes, there's some bad variance there. People asked me during the game if the Hawks were being unlucky or if they were playing badly on defense. And the answer was a definitive both. They played badly and they got unlucky. It's not one or the other. It can be both. But if you remove garbage time, when the Wizards just stopped trying at the end of this game, the defensive rating for the Hawks was like in the 130s, 140 range. It was a total mess. And even if you kind of factor in some of the shooting stuff, that can't happen. Beyond the three-point shooting, they allowed 28 fast break points. That's a sky-high number. They only created 13 turnovers in the game. That's not enough. And the Wizards were 24 of 36 in the paint. In particular, the first half, first quarter, the Hawks had zero resistance in the paint. I thought Porzingis had a terrible start. I thought Jalen had his worst game of the season, like pretty clearly on offense and defense. He was just really bad in this one. It wasn't just those two guys, but they certainly helped to set a tone that was pretty ominous for the Hawks in this game. So it was a layup line, and they were allowing three-point shooting, and they weren't taking the ball away. And that combination of three things is pretty dire. And it's kind of funny. The Hawks, by the numbers, had one of their best defensive rebounding games of the season. Now, I don't really care when you're getting blitzed, but that was funny because that's been their main weakness defensively this year. And they were actually okay there, and they still got housed by the Wizards. Offensively, it was below average for sure for the Hawks in this game. And that's independent of context. If you throw in the context of the Wizards being dead last in defense, it's a pretty rough offensive performance, even if it was worse on defense than offense. And the biggest thing is they could not make a shot outside of the rim area. So Cleaning the Glass is a great website. I use it all the time. They actually had the Hawks at 20 for 21, 95% at the rim, like in the direct basket area. They were 20 of 21. And they still had a terrible offensive game by their standards. That's crazy. And that means they were basically terrible from everywhere else, and everything else was supporting on the margins was bad. They were 23 of 74 from anywhere else on the court that was not right at the rim in this game. That's 31%. They were actually okay from three, 35%, but they couldn't make a floater, couldn't make a mid-ranger. Like any of those shots, they're kind of those in-between shots. They just didn't make any of them, basically. Then they scored 0.87 points per possession in the half court. When the game slowed down and they couldn't run, they could not score. And that is one of those things where they do miss Trae Young for sure. He was not going to fix everything in this game by any means. But I thought it was funny during the game. People were kind of asking me, like, are the people that didn't want Trae back changing their tune at all? Kind of. But regardless, that was an area to focus on. They also had 19 turnovers in this game that led directly to 28 points. You cannot give a bad team free ammunition, and that led to the fast break points. That led to some easy opportunities for the Wizards. Ball security was a big problem, and it was not just a one-person problem. In fact, both guards had 3 turnovers, Dyson and Nikhil. Jalen had 5. and everyone who played real minutes other than Porzingis had a turnover in this game. Every single player. Ricochet, Okongwu, Gay, Krejci, Wallace, everybody had at least one, and it was not great. So they also lost the free throw battle. The only real bright spot I would say on offense was Okongwu. I thought he was quite good in this game. Beyond that, like that was kind of it. Maybe you could say, Ricochet at the end had a nice little stretch in the second half. Maybe Kennard in his limited minutes as he returned from injury in this game. But, individually, as we'll talk about later on, there was not a lot of stuff to get excited about. And after, a dominant, like all-star, maybe even borderline all-NBA stretch from Jalen Johnson, he was really bad in this one, his worst game of the season. So it all filters down. But long story short, it was a terrible game for the Hawks. Like, there's no way of sugarcoating it. I don't do that anyway. I give the context if I feel that there is context needed. And yeah, if you want to lean on the fact that the Hawks had a bad spot here, like you'd be right. Or the Wizards shot the ball really well, like you'd be right. And that doesn't take you away from losing by what was probably a 30-point margin in the competitive portion of this game. That maybe explains why they lost by more than they should have. But it was bad, man. It really was, and I will move on in a second, talk about more of the game flow stuff and my observations and my analysis. But let it be said, this is one that they will hopefully be able to, if you are a Hawks fan, flush and never think about again, because the Wizards have had their number. They lost 3 of the last 5 to the Wizards. Last year, they famously lost 2 games in a row to the Wizards early in the year. It was panic time. Then they got right and won the second 2 games, the last 2, I should say, by a pretty lopsided margin. But today, it was the other way, and for whatever reason, the DC trips have not been kind to the Hawks for a while, and that was definitely the case in this one. All right, in a second, I will get into how this game unfolded, more analysis, more of the granular stuff, plus player evaluations, NBA Cup stuff, and more in just one moment. Basketball is here, and there's nothing quite like being in the arena for the opening games, or really any game of an NBA season. Let's be real, though. Ticket buying can be really kind of a headache sometimes between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and price to jump up right before you actually check out at the end of the process. It's frustrating to get through the entire thing, especially when all you want to do is get into the arena to cheer on your favorite team. That's where the Game Time app comes in to help you. It's the app that gives fans the advantage in buying tickets, and it's the ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I use Game Time all the time to look for seats for friends and other family and stuff like that, and it could not have been any simpler every time I've used it. I found great seats in just minutes. And Game Time, I love actually what you see is what you're going to get with no hidden fees at the end of the process. Also, you can actually see the exact view inside the venue from the seats before you actually buy the tickets with their in-app seat view feature. And they have zone deals that are a game changer as well. You pick the section, they pick the seats for you at Game Time, and you can save big. You can find NBA tickets for as little as $25 or less. What a great deal there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets right now for the NBA at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. The code is LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. When you get hurt on the job, do you actually know what you're entitled to? Attorney John Foy does. Lost wages, medical bills, rehab, therapy. You should get all of this and more. The system does not make it easy for you, but they do at Attorney John Foy and Associates. And every day, Attorney John Foy and Associates help people get the money that they're actually deserving and the benefits as well after they've been hurt on the job. When it comes to workers' comp, it pays to know what you are entitled to, and the strong arm can help you get that proper medical attention, pay off your medical bills, and get you on the path to good health again. I love they actually treat every single client with dignity, respect, and compassion, and they're available 24/7. Take your call at John Foy. And the best part is you pay absolutely nothing until John Foy wins your case with no upfront costs. If I was there on the job, I know exactly who I would call, and I would call the strong arm. John Foy Associates is trusted because they've helped thousands of different clients get justice and real money in their pockets, let the strong arm cut through your insurance company nonsense, and fight to get you every single dollar that you deserve. Call John Foy and Associates today at 404-400-4000. That's 404-400-4000, or visit johnfoy.com to get started. They don't just settle, they win. Get the strong arm. Call Attorney John Foy and Associates today. Right before I get back to the game itself, I want to encourage you to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Please check out the show. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Tell your friends, and I appreciate you being here as always, especially if you are a sicko diving in today after what was a definitely an ugly performance from the Hawks on a Tuesday night in a holiday week. So, I alluded to this earlier, but the beginning of this game was where the game was lost, quite frankly, for the Hawks. Now, I won't tell you because it is technically true that the Hawks won the last 40 minutes of this game. There was some creative accounting there with the very end of the game. But the first, 7 minutes, 8 minutes kind of did decide the game in some respects. They were down 18-2 to begin this game. The Hawks missed their 10 of their first 11 shots. I would say this, at least 6 or 7 of those missed shots were actually really good looks early on. I thought the Hawks early in the game, keep that very clean, were actually getting good shots. The process stuff was actually totally fine offensively early in the game. On the other side, McCollum got hot early. He made three threes in a row, and that didn't stop. They called timeout. It didn't stop anything from transpiring. In the middle of that 18-2 run, Quinn Snyder had the worst challenge I can recall him having. He challenged an out-of-bounds call in the first quarter, which you basically should just never do in general. Maybe it was desperation or frustration or whatever. It's got to be so incredibly obvious that you're going to win it to use a challenge on that particular play, given the leverage of it. And then not only did he lose it, it was actually overturned to a foul on Porzingis. So that was a disaster. Did it change the game? No, but just want to at least point that out. They took 3 timeouts in the first 6 minutes, and that actually didn't stop the run. It was 31-8 at the end of 16 possessions. The Wizards scored 31 points on their first 16 possessions. Do the math on that one. That's more than 1.9 points per trip. And yeah, they cooled off from there, but that's crazy. That should never happen ever. And defensively, it was bad. I'll give the Hawks this. The Wizards made everything. They made their first 8 threes. And according to Wizards PR, it was the first time in the entire history of the franchise that they actually made their first 8 threes in a game. They've been playing the Wizards / Bullets for 60 years, and they'd never made 8 of 8 to begin the game. So that's something. Also, Sport Radar has great stats. Had this 8 for 8 start from 3, the first time for an NBA team doing that of any kind, 8 for 8, since October 2023. So 25 months ago. That is obviously rare. And yes, that is part of what I was saying earlier. The Wizards did shoot the cover off the wall in this game. But still, defensively, it was quite bad. As I said before, there was lots of easy buckets at the rim. I thought Porzingis' first stint was just untenably bad defensively, and I thought Jalen the entire game was really bad defensively by his standards. So it was rough. And on top of all of that, the offense was 3-18 from the field. So after what I said before about how the Hawks did have some good process early on, I watched it back again, and the film told the same story. The first 5-6 minutes offensively, they just missed a bunch of open shots, and that does happen in the NBA. As good as these guys are, some nights you just don't make shots. But the problem was that led to a spiral, and then the process stopped. They started forcing bad shots in the next segment of the game, took bad shots, made bad turnovers, and were pressing, and that spiraled and kind of, I would say, got the Hawks out of sorts entirely, and that contributed to the lead for Washington blowing up. So they were down by 29 in the first quarter because of all of that. They did score the final 7 points of the first quarter to get it down to 22. Luke Kennard had a nice 3-point play in there, by the way. But they had a 165 defensive rating in the first quarter, to the worst team in the league. And part of that was that they had 6 turnovers in that first quarter, which led directly to 13 points. Now, rotationally, as I always talk about, no surprises. It was 10 guys who actually played real minutes in this game. It was Okongwu off the bench with Porzingis back, plus Kennard, Gay, Krejci, and Keaton Wallace was returning to the rotation in this one, so they had 10 guys play. The Wizards were hot still in three-point range, but the offense did get going. And I mentioned this before. They had a 9-0 run to get down to 13. So the Hawks went from down 29 to down 13 in a 7-minute stretch. They were clearly, that was their best stretch of the game by a lot. They had 23 points in 6 minutes. They made 4 threes. They only had 1 turnover, which as soon as they stopped turning the ball over, it was totally fine. And they made some stops. And it was the first and really only point of optimism in the entire game. But then after a timeout, they didn't score 4 times in a row. The Wizards had a 7-0 run, and that was basically it. The Hawks scored 9 points in the final 5 minutes of the quarter. And the Wizards got hot again. McCollum hit 7 threes. And it was a 22-point game at halftime with a 150 defensive rating. They allowed 77 points in the first half. The most points scored by the Wizards at any half this season, unsurprisingly. Other than Okongwu and Kennard, who had 24 points combined in the first half, that was about the only bright spot. And definitively, what I would say was the worst half of the year. The Hawks have had some bad halves. There was one against the Raptors where things got out of control in that game on the opener. But given the opponent, given how bad this was, it was the worst half of the season, and I will stand on that for sure. The second half, there wasn't much to discuss, honestly. I'm not trying to pun it, but offensively, they were fine early on. They scored 15 points in the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. Ricochet had a couple of threes, which was nice to see. Got a couple easy buckets. They got it down to like 17, 18. Like it was a game. They were right there. But then they allowed a 14-4 run in the middle of the third quarter, got down by 28 again. And that was basically, for me, that was it. Like it's not over at that point, but the window of, hey, this is actually a winnable game kind of closed pretty quickly in that third quarter. Overall, they gave up a 25-10 extended run over the last 7 minutes of the third quarter, and they were down by 33 points going to the fourth. In the fourth, there was like nothing really material to talk about. They put in Jacob Toppin and Asa Newell with 7 minutes to go or so, and that was the white flag. They were down 26 at that point in time. They did close the gap in garbage time. Quinn usually waits even longer than that to get guys in. Actually was happy he didn't do that in this game. But they had a short bench because they have so many guys in the G League, injuries to N'Faly Dante, etc. They had to go with guys like Mogay and Ricochet, even in garbage time, because they don't have enough bodies to finish it out. And the only real drama, actually, in the fourth quarter was whether Dyson Daniels would have a steal or not, and he didn't get one. So this is not a lead the podcast kind of thing, but it's definitely important to note. Dyson had a 70-game streak of consecutive games with a steal. That was the fourth longest streak in NBA history, and it came to an end tonight. Dyson did not have one in 32 minutes. So yeah, RIP to that. Obviously a heck of a run, and I'm sure he'll have more steals pretty soon again. But that was the only drama in the fourth, and he came out of the game. I was like, all right, that's going to be it. And he ends with fourth place on that list, and there you have it. So that's it for the actual competitive portion of this game. Like it was rough. I have some more context to pass along in a second when it comes to the NBA Cup and the future of that, or the non-future for the Hawks standpoint, plus player evaluations, and it's coming up in just one moment. When I'm hydrated, actually, everything just works better for me. My focus, my energy, my mood, even my skin, and that's why I have been using DripDrop. It's a doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day might look like. DripDrop is actually not your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using science-backed formulas trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. I like using DripDrop as well as part of my daily routine. I'll mix in a packet in the morning before work or during that midday haze that we all tend to have at work. I know I do have it all the time. It also tastes fantastic. My flavor that I go to is watermelon. It's become my secret weapon, actually, to stay sharp and energized through these long days of podcasts and all those things. And hydration is a non-negotiable for me. DripDrop is actually helping me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly just better overall. And right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order if you go to DripDrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA when you get there. That's DripDrop.com, and that promo code is LOCKEDONNBA for 20% off your first order with DripDrop. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Keep your body and mind performing at their best right now with DripDrop. All right, and before I dive into the individual player stuff in this game, a punctuation mark on the NBA Cup for the Hawks. As of this moment, late Tuesday night into Wednesday, the Hawks are not technically eliminated yet, but for all intents and purposes, they are done in the NBA Cup. You can't lose twice, and if you do lose twice, there is a mathematical way to advance, but not when you lose by 19 in one of those games and have a negative point differential. The way to have that happen, maybe it will eventually happen when a 2-2 team gets a wild card spot, but it would have to be a 2-2. Actually, not a wild card spot. Wins the group, whatever. It's not going to happen. The Hawks are done in the NBA Cup, and that means that the Hawks will have 2 more games in mid-December that will be assigned to them. That's kind of the next step there. If you look at the schedule right now that you have on ESPN or on your phone or whatever, they have a gap right now. The Hawks have a game on December 6th, and then not again until December 18th. That's not an actual break in the schedule. The league has that open because of the NBA Cup. That will be filled in soon. Last year, the league assigned the extra kind of 2 games after the group stage on Wednesday when the games were over. So the Hawks play their last game on Friday. So that would be a week from tomorrow if that's the same schedule as last year. They get 1 more road game and 1 more home game to the schedule. And if they follow last year's template, it's probably going to be 1 on Thursday or Friday in December 11th or 12th, mid-December, and then the other one will be Sunday, Monday, 14th or 15th of December. Regardless, they're not going to Las Vegas again this year. That's not happening after they made the semis last year. and the schedule will change a little bit, but it's still a lighter part of the schedule. You still only have 2 games in a 11-day period, so that is a time to get refreshed, get your legs back, all that stuff. That's the one somewhat positive. If you don't care about the NBA Cup, and I know not everybody does, I think players do care. The teams do care some. It's not like playoff level care, but they do care a little bit. One of the bright spots, though, is that there is a bit of rest there. If they don't make it, the schedule is pretty light for that kind of 10-day period, so that's a small win. But still, they would have liked to have been competitive in this game. And then Friday's game still counts. Like NBA Cup games still count. So they play the Cavs on Friday. That's a Cup game. The Cavs will be trying for the Cup purposes. The Hawks will be trying for just a game that counts purposes. But keep that in mind. It was a punctuation mark on NBA Cup for the Hawks in this one. All right, to the player evaluations. Not a lot went well. Toppin and Newell came in for 7 minutes each. Not a whole lot to say about either one of them. I thought Newell looked okay, had 2 assists, was flying around with good versatility, good energy, even though the game was over. Keaton Wallace played 14 minutes, only took 1 shot, did have 4 assists. He was not the problem in this game, was totally fine. Decent enough defensively. V. Krejci, 10 points in 14 minutes, hit 2 threes. The bench guys were really not terribly bad, honestly. Veet's defense was not the best, but he made a couple shots as he has been lately. Mo Gay, 7 points in 18 minutes, 5 rebounds, had a turnover, was +1 in his minutes, was okay. The bench was still fine. Luke Kennard looked okay to me. He missed the game on Sunday with a hip issue of some kind, inflammation there, was questionable coming into the night. I think he would have probably played more if the game was closer, but he ended up, I think positively, they didn't have to work him a lot. Maybe he'll get a little bit healthier with 2 days off after this, but I thought he looked fine when he was out there. Okongwu was probably the guy who was the best for the Hawks in this game. He had 20 points, 3 rebounds, had a block as well. He was 5 of 8 on 2s, 3 of 6 from 3. The shooting continues to be good for Okongwu. That's a nice step forward. Obviously, that's been a theme recently, but I think he was probably one of the brighter spots for the Hawks in this game. It's kind of a low bar to clear. Richeche, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, 3 blocks for Zach. Some of that was garbage time, but I thought he was totally fine, honestly, played with good effort. A couple of misses early on, but took 9 threes, was aggressive getting them up. It's still been a theme for Zach when he's been injured. He has a couple of games where he's kind of getting his feeling, and then he finds it, and he's back to normal, and he's playing well. I've seen some pretty negative Richeche takes recently, and I'm not really entirely sure why. Maybe it's just reactionary, but this is a 20-year-old playing rotation minutes on a good team. He looks totally fine to me. There you go. Porzingis, complicated evaluation. So 22 points for Porzingis, 8 rebounds. Offensively, he was fine. He missed some shots early on. He was part of that ugly early stretch for the Hawks. I thought defensively he was really, really bad in this game. He had nothing for Alex R throughout. And his first quarter, whatever reason, he's just not able to get hit the ground running in the first quarter. It's been a theme in his first stint most nights. A lot of slow starts for the Hawks when he is available this year. It's not all on him, but that's not worked. He did kind of find it offensively in this game, was at least productive, but kind of hit and miss there overall. To the guards, Dyson, 11 points, 7 assists, 9 rebounds. Didn't have a steal, of course, but was a 4 of 8 on 2s, 1 of 3 on 3s. A little bit clunky still. He was better on Sunday when he had 22 points and 6 assists in that game. The shooting is still a little bit wonky. He did make a 3, took a few more in this game. I'm okay with him shooting 3 threes in the game. Probably should take even more than that, but I thought he kind of figured it out along the way. But at times was definitely part of the problem offensively in this game. Nikhil had a quiet, not impactful night for him. He's been awesome this year, to be very clear, but not tonight. 8 points on 9 shots, 4 assists, 3 turnovers, just didn't have too much juice there. And then Jalen Johnson, I know I complimented him quite a bit earlier. I'll do it again now. He's been playing at an all-NBA level the last few weeks. He was really bad tonight. That happens sometimes. Even stars have bad nights, but 7 points on 12 shots. Did have 7 assists, but had 5 turnovers as well. Minus 20 in the game. Defensively was just not engaged at all. I don't know if he didn't have his legs or what was going on there, but defensively, he's had moments this year that have been kind of like that, but this is a full game like that, and then offensively just had no juice at all. So I'm not worried about Jalen Johnson at all. It's just one of those nights where he just didn't have it, and it was very clear from the opening bell basically that he was not going to have it, and he didn't have it. So long story short, it was pretty ugly. I guess shots to McCollum was absurd in this game, as was Alex R. But yeah, the Hawks just didn't play well enough, and hopefully a game that they will not be ruining later on in the season. Oh, I will always say this out loud. There were people that were saying it could be a small win for the Hawks, that the Wizards got to win because it could be ahead of the Pelicans. I'll say this right now. I'll call my shot. I'll be shocked if the Pelicans have fewer wins than the Wizards at the end of the year. So, yes, if you want to stretch it a little bit there and say, hey, the Wizards could be falling behind, sure. But the Pelicans won last night. They are better than the Wizards, in my opinion. So I would not hold on that. I would say, briefly on that topic, the Bucks have been struggling mightily, and the Bucks don't have Giannis right now. And as a reminder, it's the better of Pelicans and Bucks. So the Pelicans are still the focus, but if the Bucks miss the playoffs, that'd be very helpful for the Hawks in adding ping pong balls in the meantime. From here, the Hawks have a 2-day break, and they badly needed it. I saw Nekias Duncan in front of the podcast, former guest of the show, mentioned that it seemed like the entire league wants the break right now. For example, the Magic are currently, as I'm recording this podcast, up by 40 on the Sixers on the road. So apparently it's just one of those nights in the league. It's Thanksgiving break time. I get all that. The Hawks have 2 days off now. They come back home. They are back in action on Friday against Cleveland. That game has a lot less juice now than it might have had because it was going to be potentially for an NBA Cup advance berth. Now it's the Hawks can't really do that. But still a big game. The Hawks, I was actually at the game 3 weeks ago where the Hawks lost to the Cavs in kind of a slugfest in Cleveland. That's a good measuring stick game. The Cavs are good, but they're not like a juggernaut this year so far. It's a winnable game at home, but we'll see if the Hawks play like this tonight, then they're going to get killed. But if they play well, they can certainly win, even though Cleveland will probably be favored in that game. But that'll be one to look ahead to. Unfortunately, it goes into the anytime you have a 2-day break and a holiday, it's like kind of a sour note. I will see how the Hawks respond to this. But as for the podcast itself, I've done 9 shows in the last 9 days, and with the holiday, I'm going to wait until that game on Friday to have another episode. If something crazy happens, I will scramble the jets and react accordingly, but as a PSA, no show planned between now and the game on Friday, after, again, a business stretch of 9 shows in 9 days. But please subscribe, and that's the best way to find the podcast anytime is to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Ratings and reviews, greatly appreciated as well. Tell your friends, leave a comment, all that fun stuff. Please follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland, and follow my non-podcast coverage of the Hawks if you want to at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving to those of you who celebrate that holiday in the States. And I appreciate everyone listening to the podcast always very much, especially on a night like tonight. And if nothing else, we'll see you after the game on Friday. Enjoy the holiday. We'll see you all next time.